HD? No, it should be fine.
It's not showing as HD. It looks like Nick's feed.
Yeah, it's not showing as HD for me either, but I mean, it's showing it as like very high quality, but not HD. But I don't know. I have no explanation for that. Because if I do a speed test, which I do only enough, like, oh, on desktop, I love that speed test is going to HTML5 instead of Flash. I just got a warning or a notification about it. I always get like 150 megabits down and 15 up. So it's like, probably not my internet.
No, my lower third's not working. That's as usual with Chrome.
Yeah, it is. Oh, man. 196 megabits down. Not gigabits, but megabits down.
I'm glad we have that cleared up.
Yeah. And then
I gotta say, I was a little disappointed in you for doing that. Not once, but twice. At least you're consistent.
I switched later talking about megabits, but for those two, yes, I did. I have 16 megabits up. I don't think it's my internet. It's something either with Hangouts or potentially. I know you're usually infallible, but potentially you. Considering your lower third isn't even there.
That's just Chrome. I'm trying to load up Internet Explorer to have it work better.
Or am I also on Chrome and it's working fine? You don't really need the lower third.
I know.
It makes you feel better.
It does. It really does.
Oh, you didn't join my Twitter channel.
Did I not? Your Twitter channel? Or your Slack channel?
It's okay that you didn't.
It's just not my kind of channel.
Exactly. All right, when you're done working on this, we'll go to...
Just doing my two-fac off right now.
For what?
For my Internet Explorer sign-in.
Oh, man, that's terrible.
I know. It's one of those rare times that IE works better than Chrome.
That's, yeah, reason number 855. I don't use two-factor authentication. Hey, Mike joined this video call. Let's get some feedback going.
Oh, I can hear myself.
That's what I'm saying. No, you have earphones. It's not going to feedback, unfortunately.
I'm getting a bit of feedback because I have two audio channels in my ear.
That's not feedback, though.
Oh, it's just repetition.
Duplication, yeah.
Yeah. Let me close one of these. There we go. Oh, I can't hear you now.
Or see me.
Oh, there we go. I think you're just moving your mouth and not saying anything.
Your webcam did not pick up that it needs to be on in this chat. So it's just black.
Oh, no. Let me try this again.
Dear live viewers, Mike will be back. I'm not going to edit this. I'm very sorry. We do have some interesting stuff to talk about, but we're going to get this sorted out first. Oh, Mike's back.
Yay.
I had to entertain our live viewers. It was excruciating. Although I will say during your absence, not a single viewer left.
Good. That's very good news.
Agreed.
So now my Hangout toolbox isn't showing all the way down, but at least my lower third is showing. So.
What do you mean it's not showing all the way down?
Oh, now it is. Nice.
How did that fix it?
I just had to screen share, apparently.
Oh, that's the best. Is he gone now?
Oh, yeah, now it's gone. Just stay screen sharing the whole time.
That's...
Okay, I don't think Nick's coming, so...
It doesn't seem like it.
Could probably start if you want.
Yeah, I mean, this is our CES show, which probably means that we're going to talk a little bit about CES, but not in too much detail. But Mike, why don't you start with a couple pieces of follow-up you have first?
I think we'll start with what we talked about last week. Yeah. So we mentioned that a couple service providers, mobile service providers, were launching some alternatives to conventional data plans, cell services, that kind of thing. And there was news this week, or rumors, I guess, or indications would probably be most accurate to say, of Microsoft launching their own LTE SIM cards a la the Apple SIM.
Yeah.
And it looks like you'll be able to sign up for their services separate from your regular cell plan or service provider. So it's similar to the, I think it was Sugar Mobile that had the in-app data service.
Right, yeah.
It was Sugar Mobile or the other one. I can't remember specifically off the top of my head. But basically, you sign up for the service using your Microsoft account, and you link a device to that app, and you're able to use the data plan with that Microsoft SIM, and it just pushes the data signal to your device, I guess. And I don't know. They must have some sort of agreement with carriers or that kind of thing. But it's really good news, I think, because not only can you have it separate from your data plan, but you don't need a cell plan at all. You can just shove this Apple SIM or this Microsoft SIM into your device and use it. So right now, I believe it's being planned to use for the Surface.
Okay.
And I guess that's kind of the only device that they have right now. You obviously won't be able to use it with the iPad, I'm assuming, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of it being Microsoft specific.
Yeah. But I guess it depends, because in theory you can use an Apple SIM. It's just a SIM card, right?
Well, I don't know
the right shape.
The SIM card would be able to tell what device you're using, so it might not work if it's not in the right device.
Can it tell what device you're using? I am using my SIM card on a device that it was never signed up for with.
Let's put it this way. When I put my Fido SIM into my unlocked Note 4 that was previously on TELUS, Fido now knows I have a Note 4 without me telling them.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you know they know?
Because on my account it shows it as a Note 4 as my phone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I bet you anything mine still says I have a Nexus 5.
Actually,
Nexus 4?
Actually, I think I'm lying, because now that I'm thinking about it, when we bought Maria's phone, we bought under my account to use my Fido dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just put her SIM card into it. So I'm thinking that maybe that's why that shows up there. So I'd have to check her account.
Right.
So possibly it could not be this SIM. So you may be right in this case. Might have to do some follow up for that.
Fido changed everything. Ooh, that's not bad. Yeah, it still says I have a Nexus 5 that I have not had in 18 months. Although my upgrade fee, if I wanted to upgrade, would only be $52. Not bad. But yeah, so this LTE only SIM card, it's like the Apple SIM. You seem pessimistic in saying that it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to switch it between, but I think it's just going to be like regular SIM cards.
It might be, and I guess with the Apple SIM, you still need a account with a carrier to use it, right?
All the Apple SIM does is enable you to go into cellular data settings and pick which carrier you want to sign up with a plan for.
Right, but it doesn't work independent of a carrier.
Right.
Oh, so maybe the Microsoft SIM could be similar.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Oh,
if it's going to be a thing, I assume that's how it would work.
Oh, okay.
But then who knows? They could do anything.
Right. Yeah, because it could be similar to what this other carrier is doing with their data, and just having a bulk purchase and allow users to use it, not having to have a specific carrier. So
yeah,
interesting. So yeah, that's our first piece of follow up. The next one is kind of similar or a related topic with the T-Mobile Binge On service, and I guess there's been some scrutiny and criticisms of it. That at first they were saying that you have your unlimited use of their partner apps and services, and that I guess in the fine print or as one of the items was that they'd optimize video for other ones that aren't a part of the Binge On service. And it turns out that this optimization is really just throttling. And basically, and one of the issues is when they use YouTube as a specific example, when you load up YouTube, YouTube detects your transfer speeds and it uses the optimal video speed for your data speed, or video quality, sorry, for your data speed. And with the T-Mobile one, your default when you're on the Binge On, I guess, is like 10 megabits per second, for example, download. So YouTube sees that 10, they load up, say a 480 or 720p video based on that speed. But then when T-Mobile sees the YouTube video at that quality, it throttles it down to 1.5 megabits per second. But YouTube still thinks you have the 10, and then it's like, okay, now this video is not loading, or it's very stuttery, or that kind of thing.
Right.
And there's been a lot of kind of criticism of, well, why are you doing this? This isn't optimization. Don't call it that. And that shouldn't be a thing in the first place. There's no reason for that, right? Like, it's one thing to say YouTube use is going to count towards your data use, but it's another to say, okay, we're going to throttle your speed so that you have a poor experience from it.
Yeah.
And the side issue is that when people encounter this, they'll go to YouTube and say, hey, why isn't your video loading? They're not going to think that it might be on T-Mobile side that they're throttling their plan, because as far as people are concerned, their data speed is 10 megabits per second, not 1.5.
Right.
And 1.5 is going to give anyone issues, I think. Especially 1.5. When YouTube's trying to push you, a 480p video.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at with that. And people are kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum with the attitude towards Binge On, because people were originally quite excited about it and saying, this is a good thing. This is going to encourage change among carriers. But now it's like, okay, well, if you're going to do it properly and don't cause these issues for people when that shouldn't even be a part of the equation. So,
yeah. The craziest thing to me here is that they're saying they optimize these videos, which they're not actually optimizing anything. Is they're optimizing for 480, which they call DVD quality, and
it's not, which isn't really a thing.
No, it's not a thing, and if it was, it wouldn't be 480. Yeah, I put a link to there was a whole thing about their CEO John Legere and his crazy rant against the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and because
have you seen that video?
I watched part of it, yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it. I've seen discussion about it, but I haven't actually seen the video yet.
Yeah, so he basically went on and ranted about, oh, who are you guys? Who's paying you? And it's like, well, actually, they're this, they're literally on the frontier. Like, they're trying to protect internet rights, and they're not funded by any big companies. They're just funded by citizens. And basically, it made him look like an idiot for being the CEO of a major telecommunications company that doesn't know who the EFF is. He should, if he doesn't know now, he should definitely know. It's one of those things like when politicians are asked a question about foreign policy, that they should definitely know if they're running for office, and they just have no idea. This is what it comes off as. And they did some tests that they posted on EFF.org. Like, that gives it away right there. It's nonprofit.
.org, yeah.
Not that you need to be nonprofit to get .org, but that it's a good signifier that it is. They did a bunch of tests downloading video or not video, and just found that even like they literally went through a test and found that T-Mobile did no optimization whatsoever. They just gave you a worse quality video than you're expecting. And if there was no possibility to optimize, like they used a file that wasn't from YouTube or something that had variable file quality. It just had like a 720p option. They tried to download it and it just wouldn't load properly. And whereas if you went on YouTube, it would downgrade the quality. This one couldn't, and so it just sputtered because it was video, and they were being throttled. Like, it's just, they went out of their way to prove that it's throttling and it's not anything else. Yeah, it's not great.
No. So yeah, we'll see what developments come of this.
Yeah.
T-Mobile is usually good for responding to customer demand. So,
Mhm.
and this is kind of out of character for John Legere to be abrasive or confrontational in his response.
Well,
It
in his
seems
response to customers and complaints, yes, not necessarily. Like he's pretty abrasive to other carriers,
that's true.
but
Yeah.
not necessarily individuals or what he perceives as being important groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Which maybe just is more a matter of showing true colors
Yeah, I think
in a
so.
sense. Like, yeah, it's one thing to have an image, but it's another to, if you're not expected to show a certain way, then how do you not naturally react? So,
Yeah.
And the last piece of follow up I have anyway is the Apple headphone jack for the iPhone 7. There's been a confirmation, quote unquote, from a source. The headline was, "It's true, Apple will drop headphone jack to make the iPhone 7 slimmer," says source.
Yeah.
And this source is of questionable or unknown kind of
Yeah.
source, I
As
guess.
they always are. They're always
Yeah,
loosely sourced, so to
a
speak.
loose, well, an anonymous, but apparently in this case a fairly reliable source. So, but yeah, I guess they've confirmed that yes, the iPhone 7 will have no 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. They'll rely on the Lightning port for either a Lightning headphone jack or a adapter to put a plug-in 3.5 millimeter or what have you. But there's another piece of news or rumor that the new iPhone will also have noise canceling software built into it, which I didn't even realize was a thing. Like I wasn't really even sure how that would work because my understanding of noise canceling was the canceling signal was within the headphone itself that would kind of it would read the signal, do a feedback, and kind of do dynamic noise canceling in that way. That was my understanding of it anyway. But in this case, it sounds like the iPhone itself will be reading, like picking up audio signal and doing noise canceling. So that is kind of interesting if it is true.
Mhm.
But the speculation is that the noise canceling isn't going to work with just any headphone. You'd need specific, Apple or Apple certified noise canceling headphones.
Right.
Even though in theory you should be able to use any set of headphones if the noise canceling is software based, right? So I don't know. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting piece of speculation, as there always is with new iPhones coming up. And I think this one, if past experience is any indication, that it should be released in October. I think September, October. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. Usually you'll have leaks come out of manufacturers with either iPhone cases that won't have the headphone jack port, or you'll have molds that don't have the headphone jack or that kind of thing. So you'll start seeing a lot this year, I believe. So
yeah. The separate from this, there was also a report in 9to5 Mac from Mark Gurman, who is well known for being kind of spot on with these leaks, and his sources were really good. They got the 12-inch MacBook like months before it was announced. They got it pretty much dead on. Everything he said in the last couple months has been, or the last couple of years rather, has been pretty spot on.
Right.
And he was saying that when he said sources confirm that the iPhone will not include a standard headphone jack, it's pretty much taken as fact. This came out a couple days after the other report and leak that had come out. But this report from Mark Gurman also went into a bunch of detail about new headphones, specifically wireless headphones that would be made by Apple and would be made by Beats, possibly together with charging cases. So in this case, they would even go as far, or they're possibly thinking about like testing things, going as far as having wireless earbuds that go in either ear but don't actually connect via any mechanism. And so they would each have their own battery, each have their own Bluetooth signal, and like that goes way further than anybody thought.
That sounds like a recipe for desyncing.
It does. But with software, you could do it. Like it's not much more complicated than doing multi-room speaker.
I guess that's true.
Theoretically, do work.
Right.
But so there are other things like this. We talked about a long time ago. Might have even been around last CES. A product called Braggy Dash, which was a similar idea, where there's two separate Bluetooth headphones that both connect they connect kind of together. And so the battery life on something like that isn't great, but if they're able to get it to work, and it comes with the rumor is that it's going to come with a charging case, where it basically, I think it almost would charge wirelessly. If it's sitting inside the case, then that might be a good alternative.
Right.
If you don't have to actually, like, if you're not going to listen for more than 4 hours straight, when you put them away or when you put them down, you just put them in this charging case. That would make it easier. You wouldn't have to plug in 2 separate Bluetooth earbuds into different micro USB connectors.
Yeah. The Moto Hint and even the Bluetooth earpiece that Maria has right now has the same kind of case that does the charging that you just put it into. So I really liked that ability, because you charge the case and then you just take the case with you, and you always have that reserve. So hopefully if they're going to release earbuds that are separated, they'll sell replacement earbuds that you can just pick up, like either a left or a right, or if they design them both the same, then it shouldn't matter which one you have. But I can see a lot of those types of issues come up if they're not connected.
Yeah. But yeah, the I forget, I'm trying to read it and see if this says, I remember reading somewhere that they confirmed that the iPhone 7 or the next iPhone, whatever it's called, would come with the Lightning headphones by default. And I guess they would have to, because they're not going to ship with wireless earbuds. That would be crazy.
Right.
So yeah, that seems like basically confirmed, unless the source he's had before that was absolutely right, like almost clearly had inside knowledge, then this seems like this thing is going to happen. And we've seen this before with Apple, where they kind of, they get out ahead of the possible bad press, and in the form of rumors, to get people, like if people have 6 months to get used to the fact or the idea that it's not going to have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, then it's going to be a lot more palatable than if it just comes out of nowhere.
Right. Well, and I think that's, it's its own form of PR and market research, because like every tech company does this now. Every time you see a leak, I'd say 100% if I knew that wasn't an exaggeration, but a large percentage of the time it's an intentional leak.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why wouldn't you leak something if you want to gauge, like you said, either people's response or just allow people to get used to that idea. Right. It's the same thing with Samsung, when it's like, oh, they're not going to have expandable storage anymore. It's like, that allows people to get used to it and to talk about it and come up with solutions or that kind of thing, right? And now with the new Galaxy, the S7, there's rumors that they're going to bring back the expandable storage. Yeah. The Nexus devices still, their stance is, well, it's too complicated for consumers, I think is what the party line was. I don't know what that comes from. It's like, oh, what do you mean there's 2 places to store things? That's just, if I have an app on external storage, what do you mean I can't access it? And that's just... Yeah.
Well, apparently I get that to a certain extent, but it's not a great reason because people who aren't going to use it just won't, and people who are really like having it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're a guy that knows, or a person knows how to use it, you'd go out and buy one and use it. But if it didn't come with one, if you weren't going to use it, you wouldn't buy one.
Yeah.
So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, there's also the reasoning that I keep hearing or seeing every time this discussion comes up, where everything is basically streamed now. You don't actually need a bunch of space, which to a certain point is true, but only if your device has, in my experience, and there have been stuff that has been posted backing it up, that if you have 32 or 64 gigs and you don't take a lot of video, then you're probably okay. But 16 gigabytes, when half of that or almost half is being taken up by the operating system, it's just not enough.
Yeah. Like for me, I've always, the biggest phone I've ever had was a 16 gig, which was my Nexus 4. Yeah. And my new phone is now a 32 gig. And I should be fine with that, because the biggest issue I had was running out of space just for apps, because like you said, the operating system takes up a bunch. And if I'm not staying on top of either the app cache size or just my online or offline image and video storage, then it fills up quite quickly. But with 32 gigs, I'll never have that issue. So
yeah, it's I've been noticing, I don't know if it's a bug in Google Photos, but the Google Photos app on my iPhone, I'm just looking at it right now, has 6.4 gigabytes of storage in it. So it's obviously when it's backing up stuff, it's unintentionally leaving it cached for
Oh,
clearly much longer than it should.
right.
But so I have five. I have out of my 64 gigabyte phone, I have 5.2 gigabytes available, and 6 of it is just Google Photo
Right.
backups that didn't uncache properly.
Right. There's a new that I didn't add this to the notes this week, but there's a new phone that was originally on Kickstarter that I think is going to start shipping now, where it actually comes with locker storage for apps. So say you download apps and you start running out of room, you can denote an app as being stored in a cloud type storage, where I'd imagine it would back up data, like just app data and all that kind of stuff, but take it off your phone so that you can add new apps. And then when you want another app again, you can, cloud store another one, bring back another one, and it just starts working again. It won't have to, you won't have to re-download it, reset up your settings and all that kind of stuff. It'll just have your original stuff just backed up into a cloud. But you can only ever access what your phone has storage for, but you can flip back and forth between various apps. So you can and there's 100 gigabytes of cloud storage. So you can download a ton of apps and obviously music and that kind of stuff. And then when you need it, you just access it via the cloud. So it's an interesting solution to running out of storage for apps, because for me, I'll download a bunch of apps. I only ever use apps, like other than the key apps, I'll use an app, once a year kind of thing when I need it, but I still like to have it in case I need it. And in this case, it would allow you to do that, where you keep it offline or off your phone until you need it, and then you kind of re-download it, use it, and then bring it back.
Right. That's very odd.
It's odd, but it's different, and I think it's a good different, because it gets people kind of innovating and coming up with solutions for something like a set amount of storage on your phone.
Right. And you said this is just a regular Android phone that's for sale. Like,
yeah,
that's one of its key features.
Yeah, it's an Android-based phone, but one of its features is that it allows you to do that. And it's obviously, it's not phone specific. You could bake that into whatever phone that you want, but this specific phone is shipping with that.
Right.
So
it's worth pointing out, I think, that Apple has a similar, as of iOS 9, has a similar thing where, especially, they specifically use this when you're doing an update that requires a bunch of space. They will offer to delete, or not delete, I guess, I forget what the terminology is, but they basically cold store apps they need that are taking up space on your phone to be able to do the update. And then once the update's installed, they'll put everything back the way it was.
Right.
Basically, like, move things out of the way to clear the update through, which I find intriguing. And for me, look, we have Nick.
Hey, Nick. In Nick's favor, Rob, you did say FCT. You said 10:30 FCT.
Yeah.
Just on the record.
That's why I wasn't here hours earlier.
Well, in that case, I accept full responsibility, but I'm still going to say there's a calendar event, and you're invited to it.
And I don't appear to be accepting those.
You don't. That's true. I do apologize. It does say FCT. I could change it if that would make you feel better. But
just edit the.
Well, if you change it to EST, then it would make a lot more sense, and we wouldn't have had near as much confusion.
No, we wouldn't. Fortunately, Nick, we have not gotten to anything that I think you are worried about.
Oh, have you just covered CES to this point?
We're still in follow-up, actually.
Oh my!
We had a series of unfortunate events that made us start a bit later, maybe 20 minutes late.
Wow, we've got. Oh, is Mike taking on the whole all caps titles?
Yeah, he is.
Oh.
In this case, it's sarcastic, I believe.
Oh,
I don't see
that
why.
was just because the article had them as all caps. I just copy pasted.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were right in the middle of finishing up with this very first piece of follow-up, because we've already covered the second and third one. So yeah, I was saying that I was talking about the iPhone and things pushing out of the way to, like, deleting apps to give you room to install an update. And like that's really intriguing, but I've also like, if you told me that I had won a free new iPhone with more storage or was the new model or whatever, I would legitimately have no problem throwing this out the window and having full confidence that I wouldn't lose a single byte of data. So I wouldn't particularly need this Android phone because everything I have is in Gmail or Google Drive or something. Like I have nothing local to this phone that I care about.
Right.
I don't know. Do you guys have that same experience?
The only thing I wish you could do with phones in general, because to my knowledge there isn't a way to do this, but like when I swapped out my Nexus 4, I was the same way. I still have it sitting in a drawer. I haven't done anything with it, but I didn't have to do any transfers of anything. I just re-downloaded the apps I wanted.
Yeah.
And I set up my home screens the exact same way that I have it on my other one. But I wish there was a way, and there may be apps that do this, that capture your not only which specific apps are downloaded. Like Google Play has a history of which ones you have downloaded, but it doesn't say which ones are currently downloaded on whatever phone.
Yeah.
So I had to go and re-download them all and then set them up in a way that mirrored what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a way to save like a profile of your home screen layout and widgets and all that kind of stuff, and just get your phone to read that and say, okay, that makes sense, and then do that, that would be great, because that's all I'd need. Because like you said, data, pictures, contacts, that's all cloud-based, so I don't need to worry about transferring any of that. My computer is the same way. Like I have a desktop Google Drive folder that I do all my storage, and I don't store anything locally. And so when I had to swap out my solid state drive because it failed and had to go get a new one, I just brought it back and got my new one and re-downloaded all my software, because I hadn't downloaded a ton by that point. But data-wise, I didn't have to do any sort of transfer because it was all backed up on Google Drive.
Yeah. I completely agree about the apps thing. I mean, it would be nice to have a way to save the profile, but for now, just it's a matter of re-downloading and re-logging into everything.
Yeah. Well, and setting up the home screen layout, that's one of the more annoying parts, because I have to, if I didn't have my old phone already with me, if I had lost it, I probably wouldn't remember specifically exactly what apps were put where.
I usually go back into accidental screenshots and figure out where my apps were.
That's probably a good idea, actually. Once I have a good layout, I'll just take screenshots.
Yeah. So, Nick, you brought up CRISPR, this, I guess you'd call it advanced genetic modification technology, this week. And we've talked about in past episodes that where you were not necessarily involved in the discussion. Was there something that you specifically wanted to follow up on with CRISPR?
Yeah. Do you remember off the top of your head what you actually covered with respect to CRISPR?
Very basic. We basically mentioned that it was the technique used for this mosquito genetic modification.
So you just mentioned that it was the technique used.
Yeah.
Do you realize how CRISPR works?
It's not fully, but enough to know that it's amazing.
It's like, I listened to a story about it this past week, which is why I was so excited about it. It could be the future of everything.
Yeah.
Not like everything, because, physics and chemistry are still things, but everything. Like, and this is one example of how you start researching one thing and you never know exactly what you're going to find.
Right.
CRISPR was discovered after a commercial project in which they were trying to figure out why exactly their yogurt was spoiling.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think the way it works is CRISPR was the virus they discovered from that. And it's like a bloodhound-ish, sort of, kinda.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anthropomorphizing this,
That's fine.
to an incredible degree, but you say to CRISPR's like a bloodhound. So you give the sock the scent of what you want CRISPR to find, and CRISPR's like, okay, I can go get that. And so CRISPR goes, and then it snips that specific part of the genome out of everything it finds. So you can just straight up remove a gene from an entire organism. via CRISPR. And like what did they do? One of the lead researchers has, or an acquaintance, but like it's his son's friend.
Mm-hmm.
His son's friend has muscular dystrophy. And so what he did was he sequenced the genome of his son's friend, and they found a part of the genome that was aberrant from like all the other known genomes out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took that part of the genome and they said, here CRISPR, go get it, boy. And released CRISPR into a living cell, what do you want to say, culture? Yeah, culture. Okay. And so tested it after, and that sequence of the genome had been entirely eliminated. So like, you could be treating disease with CRISPR. You could be genetically engineering babies with CRISPR. You could, like, the possibilities with CRISPR seem almost limitless.
Right. Cake. My first thought after hearing all of that and the stuff that we had talked about before is
that you buried the lead with the mosquito story.
Now I'm terrified because in the hands of a supervillain or some equivalent, you could, like, is CRISPR contagious? You're saying it's literally a virus that can do this. Could you not just take out an important piece of DNA for life, like instructions on how to, I don't know, replicate, to have DNA replicate itself, and then all life would just end?
I mean, I guess.
It seems like if it is, I don't know if it can be transmitted. If the virus is contagious, but it sounds like it has scary possibilities.
I don't know that it's that contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way it works is sort of kind of piggybacking off of your immune system.
Okay.
As I understand it. And so, like, CRISPR infects your immune system, and then your immune system actually takes things out. But, I mean, I don't know. I would have been better prepared for this, but I thought we were starting in an hour.
Again, I'm very sorry.
I'm glad that you can say you're sorry with the Canadian accent there. Honestly, Rob, you're a bit of a hoser this week, but we're still cool, right?
We're cool.
You want to go for a rip?
Pick up a powdered jelly on the way.
Oh no. So how about this? We will all go and do a bit more research on CRISPR, and then we will come back informed and discuss it next week.
But I mean, I don't know. We should just like have an all CRISPR special, because honestly, like, also the food supply. The food supply could just be completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
You find that your corn is vulnerable to a pest. Find out what the pest is attracted to. Get rid of it.
Nick, we already have CRISPRs in our food supply. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh no.
Well, Mike, I'm talking about the clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats.
Okay. Not the chip and not a cracker, but a CRISPR?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the vegetable CRISPR in the bottom of the fridge.
Oh, there you go.
That's what I was thinking about, yeah.
Oh, no.
There's all kinds of CRISPRs.
Snack food thought process.
Oh, man. Okay, let's get out of follow-up here. The last piece of follow-up we have is, in my opinion, the very coolest one, because we learned at the end of this past week that next weekend, around the time that we're finishing up our episode, SpaceX is planning to launch another Falcon 9 rocket. And this one is going to be putting some oceanic testing equipment into space, a couple satellites, or maybe just one big satellite. And they're going to try again to land on an autonomous drone ship in the ocean. And apparently, tomorrow they're doing like their static test fire, and then the whole week is just kind of getting ready for it. But they're going again for the first takeoff, and what do we call it again?
Vertical takeoff
Yes,
landing.
vertical takeoff and landing.
But this isn't that thing though. This is an actual launch and then land. What Blue Origin did was vertical takeoff landing.
Yeah, I mean this is vertical takeoff and landing, but
I guess.
also going to space in between.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
And so I think
Tomorrow, I love ya. Tomorrow, you're only a day away.
it seems forced.
Why forced? Do you not just randomly break out into song?
Well, I break out in a song, but that connection is tenuous. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. I feel like they've gotten out all the kinks. They did the dry landing test, and this is going to be next weekend is going to be the big one. We're going to see them finally succeed at landing on an ocean platform.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm also interested because this is like there's important or not atmospheric again, oceanic, but like climate change testing that needs to be done with the satellite they're launching. That'll also be interesting, but the results from that, whether that's successful or not, will take a bit longer. But yeah, I'm very interested.
Are we gonna see next a battery-powered rocket?
Not for a while, probably.
Okay.
Maybe solar powered.
Battery-powered rocket?
Because it's Tesla, so
Yeah.
you know, a natural connection.
Big old
Clearly.
batteries. All right. We set last week as a goal to talk about NFC. We're already going so long to only be done follow up now.
Holy cow, we've been talking for like maybe half an hour, I guess.
Well, we've been recording for like 51 minutes. Mike, CES was this week. We have a few things we want to talk about, and you were leading the tech charge on posting links. So what excited you the most about CES?
What excited me the most? I think the most relevant, the biggest non-gimmicky thing that came out of CES that didn't seem to get a lot of press in my exposure to what people were talking about was like LG literally had a rolled up TV there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a TV showing live changing picture that was rolled up, like a newspaper.
Right.
And it was really cool. And it was rolled up and was shoved inside this kind of stand, and I couldn't tell from the video if the stand was giving it power and feeding it the video signal or if it was coming from somewhere else, because it seemed like it wasn't the kind of thing that you'd be able to kind of analog to a tablet type form factor where it didn't have to be having like a rigid power supply and video source type setup. In the link that I posted, there's a video there that shows it in action and that kind of thing, and the guy reviewing it, or the hands-on anyway.
Yep.
But I think it's really, really cool to see, a rolled-up TV, because not 2 years ago that was like science fiction.
Yeah.
So it's cool that there's companies working on this right now, and obviously it's not just LG. Like everyone and their dog is probably working on this type of technology because that's the next natural
sure.
progression for this kind of thing. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. The other thing I found was a Google glasses type, or Google Glass, I should say, type heads-up display that one of our friends at Mobile Syrup talked about.
Yeah.
It was geared, no pun intended, towards cyclists, and they're attaching to the sunglasses.
Yeah.
It could go on to any glasses type setup, I'd imagine, but
Yeah.
it might be built more kind of towards it has integrated with the Garmin ecosystem, so if you have a Garmin GPS or activity tracker, that kind of thing, it should be able to tap into that and show you speed, a GPS map, that kind of thing. So it's really cool. As I was driving the other day, I'm like, because I had a navigation type thing set up, and I'll usually throw Google Maps on if I'm driving and put it in like the cup holder next to my steering wheel. But if I had like a heads-up display, that'd be perfect. That's all I'd need because, you know, the risk obviously is you have notifications come in that distract you, but you could obviously have those disabled for a heads-up display. And if you even just had navigation kind of in like one corner as you're driving,
Yeah.
so you kind of know what street sign you're looking out for, that kind of thing, while keeping your eyes on the road, that'd be really good. So I think this is a good innovation or adaptation for existing technology, I should say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Did you see anything that you liked coming out of CES, or did you have any comments about?
Well, in writing this, I had to do some research on Garmin itself, and I learned that they have this whole line of products specifically for obviously very seasoned cyclists or people willing to spend a lot of money on, cycling safely and connectedly.
They also partner with Strava.
Yeah, they do. But so they have a thing that integrates with this VariaVision heads-up display thing, but you attach it to the back of your bike, and it provides rudimentary radar to tell you if any cars are approaching from behind.
Oh, cool.
And what side they might be coming from. I thought that was crazy, and it would be so nice to have for a lot of cyclists, because if you're on city streets and in and out of traffic, it can be terrifying just having no idea what's behind you, having to judge based on sound and really based on intuition whether there's somebody behind you or not.
Right.
So that would be handy, and you wouldn't necessarily have to look back. Or I know there are some drivers or some bikers have mirrors on their handlebars that they use to check behind them, but this would make it much easier. And if you had the heads-up display as well, you wouldn't even have to look back at all. You would get, I think it's a little warning light or something that comes on, or a little display that says there's a thing behind you on the left.
You should even be able to have a camera back there, shouldn't you? In theory.
In theory, but that would be crazy. It just like shows you your like rear view video on your
like
display.
The visualization would be similar to like a rear view mirror, just to be like a strip.
And just showing so.
Like a reduced. You don't have a full like 720p video of what's behind you.
And I'm picturing like
kind of a waste of capacity.
Yeah.
I can't imagine HD video streaming over Bluetooth or something.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like just an image of what's behind you, like or a low quality video.
Yeah, I mean, even if you had like 2 or 3 frames a second, you don't need an HD 1080 30 frame a second thing.
I think that type of frame rate would be distracting if it's just flashing and changing that often. But
yeah, for sure. But in terms of stuff that I found interesting, I wanted to just point out, maybe this is just me, but this flexible display is not really a TV. It's 18 inches.
Well,
this is LG's fault. LG wrote not LG. CNET wrote the headline.
Yeah.
But it's not really a TV. It's just a display.
Well, sorry, your rolled up display isn't big enough for you, Rob.
No, but I mean, okay, that's fine. I'm not saying it's not like the technology. It's just like this is
right.
What we had seen previously was, we'd seen rolled displays before, kind of, but they were really weird, and there was like a bump or something that integrated all the electronics, but they were tiny, like they were tablet size maybe. So this is the next generation, but it's not like a 65-inch thing that's rolled up. It's just a slightly larger thing.
When would you need to roll up 65 inches?
To move. Or to like, okay, so think about now, if you have a 65-inch TV and you need to move it somewhere, you need to like hire movers, and you need like a big, like a truck or something, or a big van. You couldn't just roll up a display and throw it in your trunk.
Rob,
when you just need like 2 people.
Rob, when you move, do you move one trunk load at a time?
I have.
You obviously haven't moved very much furniture, because couches are generally bigger than TVs.
I know. Okay.
Generally speaking.
I'm thinking of other applications for this. I'm not talking about literally moving from one house to another house. I'm talking about like if you want to take displays, say, to something like CES, you don't want to bring a whole rack of monitors. Or a big rack of 65-inch TVs to set up in your display area. It would be much simpler to have a bundle of rolled up displays that you can just unfurl, and like they weigh. It's the weight that's more of a thing than the size, the foldableness.
Yeah. But
it's the fact that it's so thin, and it can become very self-contained in a small area.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested.
Yeah, I think it's just cool they had a working prototype.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The future of robbing will be just fraught. It's like, okay, is that a poster or is it a television? I better grab it anyway.
That's what you got to do when you're away. You want to have just a static image of like the Backstreet Boys on your TV, so it looks like a poster instead of a TV.
It's good. I like it.
Nick, you you had one piece of interesting news you saw from CES. What was that?
Oh my god. So they had these little harnesses on dogs so that you could mount a GoPro to the back of the dog. It was so cute. The dog was like running around all happy to see people because, it's a dog.
Yep.
Oh, it was marvelous. If this is the future of technology, people. Cute dog videos.
Now, was the GoPro... Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was going to say, is the GoPro on the head or on the back?
It was kind of, if you're comparing to humans, it was kind of between the shoulder blades.
Okay. So it wasn't following where the dog was looking. Like, body-wise it was, but not head-wise.
You see, I think, if I'm remembering the video correctly, and memory science would suggest that I'm not, it was on the shoulder blades and angled up, but when the dog raised its head to look at someone, it was like same angle.
Oh, okay. So kind of on its neck almost.
Well, it was a golden retriever, so the base of its neck is getting pretty close to its shoulder blades.
Right.
Or I guess it's just true of all dogs. But they really raise up a lot when they look at you. I was going to say when they talk to you, because I talk to dogs and that's what happens.
And they talk back.
Well, actually, I don't know if I've discussed this on the podcast, but I frequently I'll talk to the dog, and then I'll fill in the dog's part of a conversation, but in the dog's voice. I also have to decide on what the dog's voice is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But, no, I'd be really curious to see that side of things. I really want to mount one on Bailey, my family's dog, and see how that goes.
Now, to be fair, this isn't the most pointless thing at CES. Because
it's not.
I heard about vacuums that had webcams in them.
Vacuums with webcams!
Yeah, I know.
It's a game changer!
So, yeah. And I think that's a nice segue into, Rob, your first point there.
Yeah. This was the first year where I had to wake up in the morning and figure out what was important that happened at CES, or what would rank things at least in order of importance. Whether or not anything was actually important, people can decide, and a lot of people did voice their opinions. I found, in the same way as a lot of the sort of what I'm going to call the tech press that I follow on Twitter and on social media, people are very disengaged with CES, and in fact, a lot of them chose to not even go, even though they had the opportunity, basically because it's just this massive, glitzy, shiny thing where nothing of importance happens. And if something important does happen during that week, it's generally not even there, or it's at an event that's held, but it's not on the actual show floor. When they say consumer electronics, they really mean this is a thing for that consumers are going to care about, but that sort of the media has no or little to no interest in. And you see every tech site, maybe not everyone, but all the big ones, having live blogs and having daily roundups and roundup videos. And I had to think, even though I followed it, I would never watch, even though I followed as it was going on, I would never go and watch one of these roundup videos or follow a live blog of an event at CES, because it just seems like so much money and time and effort going into this thing that is going to yield very little in the long term. It's all...
except that the consumers are where you make your money.
Yeah.
And
so they basically fuel the whole machine.
Yeah.
Right. It just seems like it's very easy to quickly, if you follow it for 1 or 2 years, it's very easy to just completely disengage from it and not want to participate in any way. And in fact, ignore it all and block keywords on Twitter and all of this stuff. And I can definitely see that, having covered it even just 1 year. It's something that I could easily do without.
But
The-
Rob, they came up with a new harness to attach a GoPro to a dog.
Right.
Like, how would you know about that if you didn't follow the CES show?
That is
CES coverage.
probably, yeah, that's the most interesting news that came out of CES. There's no argument there.
Although, I mean, did you see Reddit's reaction to CES at all?
No, not specifically.
There were a few stories as I was scrolling through the other day about the virtual reality porn that they've come up with.
I
That's
did
not
see that.
CES new or anything. That's been around for.
Yeah. Apparently, it's very good though.
Yeah, like I think they were displaying it on Oculus or something like that,
Yeah.
and
At CES?
It was in a
or
hotel
around
room
it.
in Vegas during CES.
Oh, okay.
Is what I
Oh,
saw.
okay, all right. Because I mean, I don't know. A lot of the bloggers were just like, "Well, let's latch onto this one." Like everything else is derivative and boorish, but there's porn to be had. Porn.
The very oldest thing.
Now,
One of the oldest things,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, as Crack.com has pointed out, whenever there's a new technology, we quickly try and see.
Have sex with it.
Well, not have sex with it, but use it to display that.
Yeah.
okay, so we're all consumers, right?
Are we?
We are. Whether you like it or not, or see it or not, we are. Would any of you enjoy being at CES aside from being semi-tech journalists or tech-aware people? Would you be able to have a suspension of, I don't want to say suspension of disbelief because that's not what it is, but the equivalent of this?
Hipsterism? Suspend your hipsterism? Be like,
Sure.
well, this was like news years ago, and oh my god, they're selling it to people, whatever.
Not even that, but it's like you see a dog with a GoPro on it, and you could avoid being, what's the point of that, and just having fun.
Rob, you might want to bleep this, but Mike, if there was a dog running around at CES, I would just lose my shit, and that would be my next 10 hours playing with the dog.
I'm ashamed to say if I had a dog and a GoPro, there's a greater than 50% chance I'd buy that harness.
Interesting.
It's approaching certainty with me.
Yeah. So that being said, Rob,
Okay.
we've talked about going to CES or going to some type of event like that. Would CES be something you'd be okay going to in light or despite of your feelings towards the actual tech there?
I would be interested to go if reporting on it in video, in interview, in whatever form, I think would get really old really fast. So in that sense, I wouldn't want to go to work
Right.
for to report on it.
Right.
But I think it'd be cool. I've never been to Las Vegas. I think that would be interesting. I wouldn't
Right.
gamble. I don't gamble. But it'd be interesting to see it.
Yeah.
And
Oh my god, Rob, we should go and count cards. I feel like that would be something we would be good at.
I'm pretty sure that's not sanctioned by casinos, and they would just throw you out if you.
It's not illegal,
definitely
though.
Not sanctioned.
I never said it's illegal, but it's not sanctioned.
No.
They would
Yeah,
just
they'll
get-
kick you out, but you could make money in the process. Like if you're not into gambling,
Yeah.
then don't gamble. Just game the system.
That's fair. But although I've heard that if you're counting cards, and this is a complete divergence, if you're counting cards, you're not necessarily going to make a lot of money really quickly. You
No.
just have to keep doing it, and you will, in the net, make money. And that you can, if you do it for hours or days or weeks, you can make a lot of money. But it's not something where you just walk in for a day and cash out with $1 million.
And if movies have taught me anything, you need a team.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's where the three of us could kind of work the magic, I think.
Well, I've also wondered, I mean, horse races, or just
Yes.
races of any kind.
Mhm.
If you just bet on the favorite to show, I imagine over the long term you'd make money, but you would make very little money at any given transaction.
Yeah, sure. I bet there are systems like that for at that point you may as well just invest in index funds or something. If I go and bet on the favorite to show at every race for years,
If I bet you
over.
may as well just bet on the market to increase because
Yeah.
you may as well.
So yeah, I would love to go and see CES once. I'm not against ever visiting it because I think it'd be cool. But as a human being, I have been to exhibitions before. Like I've gone to the Calgary Stampede exhibition,
Yep.
and generally I can last 2 to 3 hours maybe walking around there before I get insanely bored and just. I would want the opportunity not only to not have to work, but to be able to leave whenever I wanted.
Right.
It's just like it might be interesting, and so I'd like to go see it. But if it wasn't, if nothing there was remotely interesting,
Right.
I wouldn't. I would want to be able to leave, and I would love to be able to take anything I wanted that I found interesting. But I feel like anything you go and see is gonna be, it's gonna cost money, and it's probably gonna be expensive too.
Or not going to be available for purchase there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we like vastly increase our viewership.
Yeah. For sure.
Now a craft show I can deal with. Craft shows usually have food
That's true.
CES would have food.
and free samples.
Hot
Yeah. CES would have some food.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if
Artisanal
it's going to be
food.
the same.
Yeah.
Well, no, seriously, like probably the best salsa I've ever had was from the last show we went to here in Calgary.
Right.
Craft show.
Hmm.
Shout out to Trogi. I think it's Trogi.
The last thing I wanted to talk about with CES was just this Faraday Future car that was launched. Faraday Future is a company that came onto the scene kind of almost secretly, like people that the mainstream media didn't really talk about it or notice it at all until Apple announced, or there was a rumor that Apple was going to be making a car, and then everyone started looking at this company and going, wait, is this like a subsidiary of Apple that is their front for making a car? Because nobody knew anything about what was going on. And then so they unveiled a prototype at CES, and it's still a couple years away from ever being available, but it was sort of, we made a car, here's a concept for it, and it's similar an idea to Tesla. And I just, whether or not, I don't think, it doesn't seem like based on the design that it's an Apple car, like it doesn't seem like it's a subsidiary, but in theory they could be partnering with them. So like Faraday Future would be working on this technology and coming up with prototypes and stuff, and then in a couple of years down the road there would be an Apple branded version using that same integrated electronics and technology and battery tech and all that stuff. So it remains to be seen, but there was also murmurs this week that car-related Apple domains were being bought up by a company that it has been known to be a front for Apple. Like I think Apple.car was one of them that was bought by Apple. So it's like, if you're not working on any car stuff, why are you buying this?
Right.
But so I'm intrigued by the future of electric cars, but it does still seem like, other than Tesla, and I think there was is it Chevy that released the Bolt? I think it was. It had a 200-mile range, and
Volt.
no, it's a new car called the Bolt, I believe.
Oh, actually?
Yeah. So a 200-mile range and
Wow.
$30,000. So it's a little worse version of what Tesla is talking about doing in a couple of years. So intrigued to see how that kind of plays out, because that could be very interesting if the technology is right. But other than that, CES was mostly just, hey, this is a gadget, and it does the same thing as a bunch of other stuff that already existed, but it's slightly better and different.
Right.
Yeah. That was CES for me. Do you guys, we're going so long, and yet we still didn't talk about NFC or any of the other stuff that happened this week. How long do you guys have to just...
We could save NFC for the after show, and we can do the IUPAC news now, unless there's something else you guys want to talk about.
Frankly, I was ready to go till about noon because, well, as we've discussed.
That's fair. Well, why don't
I'd even see Nick has stories too.
why don't we start where yeah, I guess NFC we'll save for the after show. We'll each take one, and then actually that's too many. I don't even know anymore, because we've been trying to keep this to an hour, right? And we're basically at that now.
Have we been trying to keep it to an hour?
Yes.
We've been failing, but
No, we've been, like, last week was I think an hour 10.
how about let's talk about Nick's first one,
Okay.
because I'm intrigued by it. It sounds interesting.
Nick, what did you have first dish?
Oh man, how a man-made tidal lagoon could change the future of clean energy. Seriously, click on that link and go look at it.
Okay.
I'm actually going to give you a minute to click on that link and go look at it, because this could legitimately be the future of tidal energy.
I'm glad that says rendering in there because right away.
Yeah, well, they haven't built it yet. That's not the story. But tidal energy has been, that's been the promise of renewable baseline energy for quite a while.
Right.
But as with a lot of hydro energy, there can be significant ecological impacts whenever you set up shop. Like, is usually, I guess what they're doing is just damming, the base of a river or something like that. And so when water goes in or comes out, as it's always doing in a high tide situation, or a, high tide flux,
Okay.
details. I mean, you're completely blocking off wildlife if you do that,
Right.
if you do something like that. And if you're not blocking them off, you might be doing what you're doing to the American eel right now in the St. Lawrence and turning it into pink slime.
Right.
So, like then the question remains, how can you generate energy from tidal or from the tides, but without being significantly disruptive to the ecosystem? And so what they've come up with are these little lagoon kind of things. So when the tide flows in, it's either good. I mean, based on the look of it, I don't know if you're expecting waves to splash up into it or something,
Right.
or you just open the reservoirs and allow the lagoon to fill, and then when the tide goes out, you open, but it'll spin the other way, and then it's going to go backwards. Either way, you can generate energy from the turbines being forced, as I understand it. But I mean, this is really cool because the other thing that apparently comes up as an issue is erosion and losing coastline. But if you put up these lagoons to kind of break the waves that are continuously hammering the shores in high tide situations, you can alleviate that too.
Right.
So, I mean, what do you guys think? Because as far as I understand it, when we're talking about going into a renewable energy future, baseline capacity is really the limiting factor. Because it's always, oh, we'll install a lot of wind turbines and a lot of solar panels and everything will be great. And yeah, no, it won't. Because you have to have grid-wide storage for just tremendous amounts of energy. Because people aren't using that much energy between like midnight and 7 a.m.
Right.
But there's still a lot of energy given, whatever population you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And grid-wide storage is going to be challenging.
Yeah.
So you either have that tremendous problem or you have to generate it somehow. So, I mean, one of my favorite options is garbage plasmification, but that means that you're not recycling your plastics and people get ornery about that. And it's that, or it's geothermal, and geothermal has its problems, or it's nuclear, and people hate nuclear because they're ill-informed. And yeah, so this could be, especially for, I don't know, jurisdictions like Atlantic Canada or British Columbia. Wait, does British Columbia have tides? I'm an idiot.
They would.
I assume they would.
I would hope.
Yeah. Oh, right, because they call it tidewater.
And it's an ocean, so.
And that was the time that Nick was an idiot. So long and short, with these coastal jurisdictions that we have, that could be a big part of future baseline energy.
Right. Until you explained how tidal electricity is generated, I got it confused with wave generated energy.
Oh
Where
yeah.
they have like those flotation things that bob up and down with the waves. That's I learned something there about tidal generation. And yeah, as far as baseline energy goes, when we went to that geothermal thing, I wasn't familiar with what the specific implication of baseline energy is, but I think the way the guy described it was pretty enlightening. How here we're used to just turning on the light switch and you have electricity, but if you don't have sufficient baseline energy, you wouldn't be able to do that necessarily. So I think what you're saying is true, that baseline is kind of what you need. That's what you're going for when it comes to energy in general, and especially alternative if you're trying to replace something like gas-fired or coal-fired power plants. So as far as this being a viable alternative, the only context I've heard of tidal generation was in Australia, because I think that's a fairly big locale for this kind of thing.
I was gonna say, they have a lot of coast.
Yeah, they do. And so I couldn't comment on the effects it's had down there, but I know that people have had mixed feelings on how it's played out, because I think it's similar to what you're saying. It has an impact on the ecosystem that it's set up in. So I think if this, like you're saying, if it solves that issue of the ecosystem effect, but also effectively generates that power, I don't see why you wouldn't at least try it to see if it could be a solution elsewhere as well.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it will probably have its own impacts, because everything do does.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm actually curious to see whether you'll get little ecosystems within the lagoons.
Right.
But I don't know, maybe ducks would like it, or something. Ducks like fresh water, don't they? Gulls? Maybe?
Seagulls. Yeah, you could have little seagull population there. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Osprey might really like it. That would be a great way to keep fish out of them. Robert, you were reserving judgment?
Yeah, I'm going to hold out judgment. I'm enjoying listening to you guys talk about it. I don't really have anything to add. It's different. I'm intrigued.
Right? And
so,
it looks beautiful, the mock-up.
I just, when I saw that, I thought, how expensive is that going to be to build? Because if the expense outweighs
small island.
Yeah. If the design and expense outweighs the benefit of using it as an alternative energy source, I think it's kind of overkill if you're going to design it that way. But
sorry, go ahead.
I just want to point out the second sentence of this article says, it's not the plant size that's striking, but it could ultimately power 155,000 homes for 120 years. That seems like it's probably going to recoup the costs.
Well, most hydropower does recoup its.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Unless it's trillions of dollars, it's probably going to be okay.
I feel like if I were an eccentric billionaire, I would seriously consider building one of those as my, I can't have a private island, I will build one.
Yeah.
And then make money from the power it generates.
Yep, for sure. Anything else on the tidal lagoon?
I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
For the moment. I highly encourage you to read the article, because it's really neat.
I like the idea that every place is trying to come up with an alternative energy source that makes sense for that location. Like, there isn't going to be just one blanket alternative energy source to replace or alleviate the reliance on hydrocarbons. Like, we talked about the solar panel setup that they're trying to experiment with in the Middle East and Africa. That, it makes sense for there. There's a lot of sun and there's a lot of open space. In this case, it's the UK. There's a lot of coastline and tidal systems, I guess, that make it work. So, and I think, in Alberta, there's a lot of geothermal.
We don't have quite as much tide water in Alberta.
No, we have wind and we have geothermal reservoirs. So I think that's kind of gonna be, and we have a lot of sun too, not direct, high energy producing sunlight, but a lot of sun in any case. Yeah. That I think those are going to be kind of the key players in alternative energy for us anyway. So I'm excited to see these kinds of things start kind of getting innovated and getting into the news.
Yeah,
Sure.
I bet we have some uranium too. Saskatchewan has uranium, so I'm sure we have it.
Do they have uranium? Oh, I think I remember seeing a map showing that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because the uranium that powers Ontario's nuclear power plants, it all comes from Saskatchewan, despite the fact that Ontario has enough uranium deposits to entirely power everything from nuclear for the next 100 years. They still buy it from Saskatchewan because it's just cheaper to mine in Saskatchewan.
Huh.
Makes sense. We don't have to dig through the shield. Maybe that might be the issue.
Oh, there's Shield in Saskatchewan.
Is there?
Oh yeah,
Where? What?
like Saskatoon.
Manitoba,
Saskatoon
maybe.
Shield.
What?
Like the Canadian Shield actually goes through most of the country, hence the
No.
name.
Is it as close to the surface as it is on
Oh, well,
Ontario?
maybe not, but I mean up near Saskatoon and stuff like that. Basically, the boreal forests are Shield, as I understand it.
I guess
Yeah.
northern. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean down south, like I think the Shield is there, but it's the grasslands, so not quite as barren.
Right.
Yeah.
Mike, you wanted to talk about chemistry, but you didn't
I
want
did.
to talk about it.
I wanted us to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'd comment. I wouldn't have too much to say myself on it, though.
Right.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think are the implications of this news, though.
And what is this news?
This news, and again, I don't know why these are never bigger news, but it seems like a big deal to me. That there's 4 new elements. They were predicted to be there. They're expected to be found at some point, and they've been found, or generated, or
Created, yeah.
created, I guess. So specifically 113, 115, 117, 118, indicating the number of protons that these elements have.
Yeah.
They've been generated or created in I don't know actually where it was created.
A bunch of different
Didn't see
countries.
it. A bunch of different countries apparently, not CERN, but at various countries. And so IUPAC recognized them as being discovered, and they've invited naming propositions to come forward from the discovering groups.
Mhm.
So, guys, what does this mean?
Nick?
It means the periodic tables from now on will appear slightly differently.
That's kind of the only effect that anyone in the normal population would probably notice anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rob, if you have anything to say, by all means.
Well, I would say, like the very top of this announcement from IUPAC, which is the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, is that we have now completed, like our periodic table as it stands right now, doesn't have any gaps anymore.
Right.
And all that's left to discover, really, unless we start getting into crazy science, is the super heavy elements that have been rumored to exist. But that we, like, so there's 7 rows in the periodic table, and they're all full. But in theory, there's nothing stopping, other than instability, there's nothing stopping more electrons from being added or more protons from being added to stabilize a heavier element.
Well, what I was going to say is, like, the table as we see it now is complete
Right.
until we add another row, because
Exactly.
that's heavier elements.
By electrons, do you mean neutrons?
No, so I mean when I say electrons, like you'd have pairs of electrons and protons. Neutrons just get sprinkled in to make things stable, but the actual thing that would make it a new element is having a proton and a matching electron to stabilize the charge.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. But the electron itself doesn't make it a new element. You still need that proton.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the proton that makes it a new element.
Right.
If you alter the number of electrons, what you have is an ion, so just a charged atom.
Right. So when I mention electron, it's because I was thinking about it in terms of the period. So when you open up a new row, that would be a new electron shell. So I was thinking adding the electron, but the thing that makes it a new element, it would be the proton.
Right.
Yeah.
As will shock, well, I would say nobody, but the chemists chemists tend to look at the periodic table and think of electrons because it's the electrons that do the interesting things in terms of chemistry. So, yeah, I mean, you do get the extra electrons because there is another proton in the atom. But, I mean, that's just details. It's the electrons. Like, what could they do?
Yeah.
Right. As it's interesting just hearing about how these types of elements are created, because I guess they're very quickly decaying because of how heavy they are.
Oh, yes.
And like reading in this article, I don't know if it was the IUPAC one or the second one, the Vox article that I read originally, how like the decay times, like the half-life is incredibly fast. Like if you blink, you miss it.
Well,
And
if you blink,
thankfully
you
you're not
have
having
missed.
people looking for it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have computers detecting them. You don't have people
Mm.
looking for them. So it's cool. I like this kind of science.
Yeah. I'm looking right now at the Wikipedia entry for the last one, the so-called noble gas, because in theory it's stable. It's the least stable of all the noble gases.
What is the most stable of these new elements?
Wait,
Yeah.
no, helium is more noble. Helium's the most noble, isn't
No,
it?
I mean, of the new ones that have been discovered, it's theoretically, it's supposed to
Oh,
be
the
stable.
most. Okay, yeah.
And this is
I
the
mean,
least stable
nucleus
noble
wasn't
gas.
tremendously unstable to begin with. It
Yeah.
would be the most stable.
Yes. So element number 118 decays in less than 1.9 milliseconds, and then that product, I don't even know what all. I haven't actually looked at the periodic table since other new elements were added. Like a bunch of, well, not new elements. So they used to all have designations like ununoctium, which is 118 in Latin. There are elements like that have been given names, either scientist names or based on the place where they were discovered, things like that. So then that 118 decays to another thing with the symbol LV, which has then 10 milliseconds later decays, and then that third product decays in 0.16 seconds. So we're getting more stable, only 0.16 seconds, to a fourth product, and then that fourth product in 1.9 milliseconds decays again. So like within less than a second, you get, like, not only is the thing you were looking at gone, but it's already turned four different things, and then none of those exist anymore.
So what does it ultimately decay into?
It's not even clear to me yet, because you have to follow the whole
Oh, I
path.
guess you'd have to go all the way back, yeah.
And so, yeah, you can look through, and so all of these ones aren't necessarily decayed. So the ununoctium 118 decays into livermorium, which is named for Livermore. And then
Say what? Livermorium is named after Livermore?
I believe that's the university where it was discovered.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And then, so I'm looking, like, FL is completely, like, I've never heard of the element FL, and I don't even see it here. Like, in some cases, there's also different names when there's competing claims for an element.
Oh, okay.
But so
I
FL is
I
fluorovium.
imagine that FL is just going to cause problems for first-year students.
I was just thinking, like,
trying
isn't
to
that
deal with
fluoride?
fluorine.
Yeah, or fluoride.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next one is 114, which is fluorovium, which is named after the Flerov laboratory in Russia. And the last one is CN, which is 112.
Is that copernicium?
Yeah, that's copernicium, which has a half-life of 29 seconds.
Oh,
Wow.
long one.
I know,
Yeah.
right? And it decays into, I guess, in general, these ones tend to go towards lead, unless they split in half. Some of them split into much smaller things, but lead tends to be the thing that most of these turn into eventually, after a few seconds, or in this case, I guess, a few minutes.
Lead's the last stable element, really.
The last long-term stable one.
Unless we're talking about technetium, which is just weird, and
Yeah.
we won't talk about technetium.
But yeah, this whole world is very new. We haven't really done much research with it, but the craziest thing is that to get these elements, you have to take something that's already unstable, like californium. Like for unoctium, as an example again, you have to take californium, which is itself radioactive and unstable, and hit it with calcium, which is a pretty big atom. And just mathematically, the way it works out, when you add those two together, you get something that, in theory, should be stable. So they just keep trying this at higher and higher energies of collision. And what you end up getting is a few atoms of something that last for, in this case, less than a millisecond.
Right.
And if you do that enough, if you get, I think it's usually three experiments that are successful in creating elements that have at least a few atoms, you get to name it. And so basically what this means is like something like 10 or 20 atoms of this have ever been created, and they've all lasted for less than a millisecond.
Right.
But that's what we designate as being enough for having discovered it.
You're still at the mercy of statistics too, aren't you? Yeah. When you do that smashing?
Mm-hmm.
Like quantum physics and all that kind of stuff.
You smash literally 10 to the 23 or 10 to the 24 atoms together, and you get a few collisions. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, the big thing with this kind of science is, have you seen the nuclear stability belt, Mike?
No. I may have, I don't remember though.
So it's like atomic number plotted against mass number.
Okay.
And so, when you start out, it's more or less like 1-to-1. Each proton will have one neutron.
Sure.
Maybe differences because of isotopes. But as you get higher and higher, you get more and more neutrons proportionally speaking. Mm-hmm. And the usual layman's reason why is that you've got so much positive charge stuck into the nucleus together that you need those neutral charges to kind of dilute it so it doesn't just
fly apart.
Explode. Yeah. So, I mean, what they've hypothesized is that going higher and higher, you will have islands of stability, is the term, I believe. So you're hoping that you will be able to make these supermassive atoms, but by doing so, you might understand what makes them stable in the first place, because right now, apparently, it's kind of like spin with nuclei, as far as I know. It's just kind of like, you ask someone, why is this the way it is? And people go, oh.
Yep.
But you use that fact, like that knowledge, to help you, even though you don't really know why it's like that.
Well, it's like, I don't know, like getting a larger data set might reveal clues as to why nuclear stability works as it does. Like, why do you usually find uranium-235 and 238 and not 236 and 237? It's just that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just all of a sudden it's stable and it works, and we don't really know why. So that's I guess the main academic driver of this kind of thing. But it's interesting. So 4 new elements announced at once is also kind of interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people in the know knew that it was coming if they were reading the papers, but
well, and I guess these were actually discovered or created X amount of time ago, and they were only just recently confirmed by IUPAC as being like approved, I guess. So it's not like they were all conveniently discovered at the same time.
The like head of IUPAC has like a big red or green pen, and like gives a green check or a red X as the final. And they hold it up to a large stadium, and nerds everywhere applaud.
Yep.
I think they should crowdsource names for these elements. I think that'd be cool.
That would go so poorly.
You'd have Reddit or 4chan or something. Yeah, I was just gonna say. I'm glad you're, 4chan would definitely troll that poll.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But I also think it's interesting that you don't actually find the elements. You find the radioactive traces that they were there.
Yep.
Just because you're looking at decay patterns and not much else.
Yeah.
Which, on that note, should we just tease that there might be a new particle discovered at CERN?
Do we know anything about that?
I don't know anything about
I
that.
hadn't heard anything about that either.
Oh, there were a bunch of stories out. How did I find these stories? Actually, you know what? At least half of that might be Kaya, because I basically
Which is
have a staff.
Confidential, privileged information that you have access to.
No, it's just she comes across news stories and goes, "Oh, this might be useful."
You should have her on her Slack channel and she can just post them.
Yeah.
Why would I subject someone else to Slack?
Slack is the best. Oh my goodness, it's so good.
You know what she does? Currently, she sends them to me via Hangouts, and then I archive them.
So why aren't you posting them to Slack?
Can't give away all my stories. You might replace me with a robot. Who is that robot on our automation episode?
That's Nickbot.
That's true, Alex.
Yeah, you could just program Nickbot to chime in every 10 minutes. Go, wait. What was that, Rob?
What time are we doing this show?
This is we're
I
gonna
think
talk.
we're looking at a connotative definition rather than the annotative one.
Interesting. So, yeah, this particle will have to do. I'll have to do more research at least because there's not a whole lot here. But basically, they're still saying it could be a statistical bump. But independent teams at CERN both discovered it at the Atlas and CMS colliders.
They're two of a kind. They're looking for whatever new particles they can find.
Thank you.
No problem.
Before we move away from this, because I find this stuff all so fascinating, I have to recommend a YouTube channel. If you guys are both not watching it, you should start watching it if you're ready to have your mind blown. The channel is called PBS Spacetime, and I post videos from there sometimes when they particularly blow my mind. But every week or so they release episodes talking about quantum mechanics, talking about quantum physics, and all the I couldn't begin to do them justice because I'm now going back through the back catalog, trying to get caught up on what all these things actually mean, like trying to learn the background of quantum mechanics because I thought I knew, but turns out I had no idea. And I can watch these videos so many times, and it all comes out so interesting, but I still have no idea how to actually come to a complete understanding of it. But I'll put a link to it. But check out PBS Spacetime because it's such a cool channel, and there's so much more knowledge that is out there about physics and about the world on that sort of tiny scale than I ever thought we knew already.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, how do you feel about matrix algebra? Because apparently, if you really want to understand quantum mechanics,
Nick, I hated linear algebra so much.
Yeah, so did I. I thought it was
never
like the worst
it.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of try and remember enough to do the problems and pass the course, and it's like everyone who's ever complained about math to me and who's ever told me, like, honestly, I just don't get it. I just try and remember how to do the problem so that I can pass the course and never deal with this again. Like, for the longest time, I just didn't understand, and then I did linear algebra. And it's like,
that's it.
Oh my god.
I think
Just need to remember how to do these problems so I never have to do it again.
See, I enjoy vector algebra, and matrices are just groups of vectors. So I think
hated vector algebra.
I think if you approach matrix algebra as vector algebra, a bunch of vector algebra, I think you'd probably do better. And I didn't realize that when I was doing matrix algebra, so I hated it like you guys. But when I did vector
eigenvalues.
But that's the thing. Like, eigenvalues and eigenvectors, those have analogs to what we've already been familiar with working with. They just have different names and different ways of coming up with them. So
all of that, like that entire course, I passed that course because of a bell curve.
Eigenvectors, if I remember correctly, are like roots of a matrix. Like the same way that you have roots of a quadratic or a polynomial, right? So if you think of eigenvectors as roots, then that should kind of clarify things, maybe.
You're saying a lot of words that I recognize from that class. But honestly, Kate, that exam, the final exam that was worth most of our final score in that class, I left probably more than half the questions completely blank because I just did not
Right.
understand anything from that class. I would need to take it 4 more times
Rob,
before I understood it.
I did the exact same thing when I took the course. It's now only that I've actually used matrix and vector algebra in my work that it's like, oh, this makes sense now.
I would love to get that.
Yeah.
If you have any teaching materials, I would honestly love to learn it because that is the biggest thing that's missing from my understanding of
Right.
math and science.
Right.
Seriously though,
If I come across anything that I reference,
if you learned from any resources, I would love to see those.
I remember, like, you know how some lectures will take you through like a story of something, and then they'll say like, and this is exactly what we were looking for, what we were looking at before, and everyone goes, wow, that's amazing. And then they try and do that for linear algebra. They're like, look, it's just a multiple of the original matrix, and people are like, it's an eigenfunction or an eigenvalue, and you're like,
Yeah, that never made any sense to me. Oh man, I'm gonna have a nightmare tonight.
Anyway,
all right, let's leave that hellscape behind. And talk about something that
I want to
is.
say one more thing about matrices. They are the
Okay.
perfect thing for computers to work on, but when you're trying to solve like a 10 by 10 or something like that, every single time, like, people will make a simple arithmetic error at some point or another, and the whole thing is ruined from there. And that's matrix algebra for you.
It's like Sudoku, but vital to our understanding of the universe. Oh man. So I don't know how much you guys paid attention to this this announcement from the Canadian Space Agency and our new Minister for Science, Innovation, and something else that I can never remember. But he's our main science minister. He went down to somewhere in I think it was like Vaughan, Ontario, or something, where they have the headquarters of the Canadian Space Agency. And
In Vaughan?
Sorry?
In Vaughan?
I'll look
What a
it up.
strange place.
Nope, completely wrong. Saint Hubert, Quebec.
That makes equal
sense?
amounts of sense.
That is where there is a Canadian Space Agency thing. Anyways, so they announced a bunch of funding for a company, a Canadian company that's actually based out of Ottawa.
It didn't seem like a bunch of funding.
Well, okay, within relative scales, not a bunch. It's a $1.7 million contract for a new visual system for the International Space Station. And so reading this made me, or listening to part of the announcement that I did listen to and then reading about it afterwards, I do not know, or I have not been keeping up on my ISS, and especially the Canadian involvement in the ISS, because I thought the Canadarm was still there, and it turns out it was decommissioned a really long time ago.
Oh, really?
And now there's a Canadarm 2 that's up there,
Okay.
but the original one was brought down with the last, I think it was one of the last space shuttle missions. So like it was a really long time ago. And so this new system will function in collaboration with two. So there's a Canadarm2, and there's also a third module built by the Canadian Space Agency, or in collaboration with them. It's called Dextra because it's very dexterous and moves around a lot. And so this new vision system is going to be mounted on Dextra. And it has, among other things, a 3D laser, which sounds awesome. It has cameras in both visual and infrared. And it's going to be used to detect possible damage or like micro fractures to the International Space Station. So it'll be able to go around on the outside of the space station, take really high definition images and image things in the infrared to see if there's any. So Nick, I feel like this is
doing NDT.
This is what your job should be. You should apply to go up there. But basically, what they're saying is, what has to happen now is either you have to go to a spacewalk or they have to use whatever camera they can take outside manually to look for damage every time something happens. Whereas this could basically, this is actually going to be controlled mostly from the ground, and they would just be able to monitor it constantly, what's going on, see if there's any damage, see if there's anything that could be sort of damaged in a way that it won't cause anything immediate, but over time could catastrophically fail or something. So the whole thing itself is about the size of a microwave oven, so they say. And one of the coolest things I think that I read out of this is that all of these images are that both cameras, the infrared and the visible one take, are public domain. So they have to, like NASA does, they have to post the images. And so we're going to be able to see up close the outside of the ISS that like we haven't really seen before, because this is like a brand new state-of-the-art camera that's going to be going up by 2020.
So
very excited.
Are we going to call it the Canada, like the Canada Eye?
That would be cool.
I thought I read that somewhere. That is actually what they're going to call it. I'm not even joking.
Is it on Twitter?
Oh, good. I was going to say, I feel like Canadarm was okay, but like pun intended, I feel like Canada may be reaching a little.
A little, maybe, yeah.
Like I thought I read Canada Eye somewhere, and I'm like, oh yeah, that reminded me of the Canada Arm, and then I could be making.
And that's exactly what it was.
I'm pretty sure it was Canada Eye.
Canada Eye. I'm seeing on Twitter people announcing, although maybe this is
Canadaser.
There's one guy talking about, he referenced Canada Eye. Who is this guy? He is the U.S. Canadian ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Tweeted about it, calling it the Canada Eye.
Yeah, it's a thing, whether it's official or not. People
Right.
are talking about it in that way.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, there's an existing nomenclature, and now it's an eye instead of an arm.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Should just write
Oh.
sorry on the outside of it, but with like the little grammatical line over top of the O.
Right.
We'll say sorry.
So there is actually, CBC News Alerts even used the term Canada Eye.
Yeah. And there's
Interesting.
this Chinese news site that calls it the Canada Eye.
I think CBC News Alerts is probably the main one there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Canada staying involved with space exploration, and even in this small capacity where we're kind of doing maintenance on the ISS, because it's getting pretty old. The ISS has been up there for a really long time now. Eventually we'll have to get something new to supersede it. We'll have like a full-fledged, I don't even know, like something from futuristic sci-fi.
Yeah. Well, and if it keeps people, like the astronauts, inside the space station more and doesn't require them to go out, then that helps too, safety-wise.
Well, like,
Yeah, for sure.
this might be an East meets West topic, but Canada is definitely a functional power, and that's like the role they've chosen to adopt. Not a superpower, but like it's just a reality. Like
Yeah.
we can't, with our population and our current setup, be a superpower. But like in certain capacities, we act as though we might be one.
Well, we're leading. Yeah, we're leading the world in a lot of specific.
I would say we are punching above our weight.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Yeah. So again, this is not coming online until 2020, but they'll be working on it. And yeah, you mentioned $1.7 million is not a ton of money, but it's not small change. Like the contract is. Sorry?
I'd get up and walk around for 1.7 million.
It's technology they're already developing. It's just for the module to go up.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. How about next? Nick, let's talk about your other story next.
Are we still going on? I think we're coming over an hour and a half now.
Oh, so now you want to stop? Do you guys want to? Do you want to stop there and then talk about an NFC and an after show?
We could do that.
Yeah. Nick, are you
My
okay
next
with that?
story might also be follow-up because I know we've talked about it before.
Fair enough. Well, in that case, we can follow up on it next week, perhaps.
Cool.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you all very much for bearing with us through our insane number of stories and length of follow-up. We'll be back next week with more Science and Tech Talk, and you can find past episodes of this show and much more at unwindmedia.com/futurechat. See you next time.
Ciao.
Toodaloo.
All right, Mike, NFC. You said something that raised a lot of ire in my mind last week.
Yes, I didn't say something. I posed a question.
You tweeted something that was
I offered people to give feedback, and
very inflammatory.
it was not inflammatory at all.
What
Seemed
happened?
Inflammatory.
What's this?
So my question was, because I saw a story on, it was probably Apple Pay or one of those type things, how revolutionary it is and how excited people are about it. And my question was, to those that are as excited about it as they are, what added benefit or difference do they see in the utility of a Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, what have you type system, as opposed to just your regular tap and pay
Oh,
cards?
I might have something for this.
So
for
we
you.
talked about this before, but I don't know if we went anywhere with it or concluded anything. But it's coming up again because Apple Pay is being integrated into a lot of places. Samsung Pay is coming out and all that kind of stuff. So, Rob, I'll let you give your initial impression on the question and your thoughts, and I'm interested to hear what Nick thinks too because he seems to have some feedback on it.
Okay. For reference, Nick, you will get a chance to. Nick, would you rather start? What I'll do
You
is
can
I'll
start
read-
if you want. It seemed Rob was the one that wanted to talk about this. So
Well, I might have context as to why it's exciting.
okay, go ahead.
I'll read Mike's question, and then you can say why it's exciting. So Mike said, honest question to those excited, so excited for phone-based NFC payment ability. How are these better or different than tap and pay card-based NFC?
Okay. So I listened to NPR's podcast Planet Money.
Hmm.
It's a shame I don't have a pop filter there. But Planet Money did a story not long ago. Well, they keep repeating it, I think. But they did a story on credit card signatures and why they're necessary. And they talked a lot about it. Like, they assume that there are people like handwriting analysts collecting these receipts and looking them over. And apparently they used to do that. Like, it used to be full-time jobs. You'd have document analysts sitting back there and comparing to stock signatures.
Mm.
But the problem was that, like, every single time, like, whatever the sample size of actual fraudulent signatures were, it wasn't getting caught by, like, just the number of man hours they could possibly use on it.
Right. Which
It
makes
was
total
just
sense.
like, yep, matches, like, all day long, every single day. And so eventually they realized that it just wasn't worth doing that.
Mhm.
You would just wait and see if there was a dispute. So when they actually look at the signatures, when they
You
actually
being
look
who?
at banks,
'Kay.
credit card companies, whatever, when the signatures on receipts are actually looked at, it's a result of credit card theft or fraud where there's a disputed charge. The customer will call up and say, I didn't buy this, like, this isn't me. And so the credit card company or the place.
Vendor?
Like the
Yeah, the
the-
vendor,
the-
sure.
the-
Sorry. So the vendor or the credit card company will then be on the hook for it. And the vendor doesn't have to pay if they asked for a signature.
regardless of
So-
who actually signed it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So if the vendor asked for a signature, they're essentially asking for, the signed contract. I agree to pay, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they did their due diligence by asking for a signature. And the onus is then on the credit card company to say whether or not that signature is valid. So basically, vendor pays if you didn't get a signature, credit card company pays if you did.
Hmm.
So then they're talking. They went on this big long 20-minute story about credit card signatures and why on earth you would bother. And then they come on and go, now there is a better way. And I'm like, yes, God, the PIN number. And it's like, there are some places in Europe that have little chips in their cards where you can plug it in and just enter a PIN number, just like you do on an ATM. And I'm like, yes, it's the obvious answer. Why are you not doing this? How are you the most powerful nation on earth and you don't do this? And so, yeah, the answer is that the United States signs for everything credit card related, apparently.
Up until very recently.
They don't have the chip. They don't have the PIN number. And tap must be like this weird, futuristic future. Like, well, one day we'll be able to just tap and pay for things. They're like, oh my God, we could do that with the iPhone. We could do it with the iPhone. They're like, or a card. Like,
there's places in the States that have or will be getting Apple Pay before tap cards or PIN cards.
yes, that is why it's such a huge deal.
I didn't think about it that way. I can actually appreciate that, Nick. Thank you.
Because like, if you went back to when you had to sign for every single thing you paid for with credit cards, like, yeah, it'd be a pain. I'd love for the PIN or tap system.
Sidebar, there have been we recently got new credit cards because I guess MasterCard detected a risk with ours, so they like, here's some new numbers. So it took me a bit to find a pen that actually worked on the back of it because for some reason pens don't sign backs of credit cards very well.
Nope.
So I was like, well, I'll just leave it unsigned for now. Most of the time I'm using my pen anyway. So there are 2 times where the systems, I think it tangentially mentioned this on Slack, how the pin failed, the tap and pay didn't work. So they're like, okay, swipe. So I did 2 instances where I had to swipe without a signature on the back. And then I just signed the receipt when there's no signature on the back. So
yeah.
And then another side note is my debit card recently got skimmed, apparently, and then someone in Indonesia was withdrawing money off of it. So the bank's
pretty easy to detect fraud.
Yeah, well, so the bank called me. It's like, so there's like 3 in a row transactions from Indonesia where they're ATM withdrawals. Is that you? It's like, no. So like, okay, so we'll send this to our group and they'll refund you whatever. So that's no big deal. Like they're gonna refund me, but those are kind of 2 downfalls of the swipe system / swipe and sign system because it not only leaves risk of fraud, but you can just skim a stripe versus that pin, which from my understanding the chip is a bit more secure and not as easy to just kind of pull information off of as a swiped card. So 2 points in favor of chip / pin or tap / chip. Rob, lay it on me.
So let's figure out what you're saying is phone-based NFC is not better than card-based NFC. Is that what you're saying?
I'm mostly saying that the act of reaching into my wallet, pulling out a credit card, and tapping versus pulling out my phone, which may or may not already be in my hand, but that's a side point. So let's say pulling out my phone, going into an app, or putting my thumb on my fingerprint reader and tapping my phone isn't enough of a different action for me to warrant it as a groundbreaking, exciting technology.
Right. And in that, I guess not your defense, in the defense of that argument, it's not as big a deal in Canada as it was in the US. Like, as of right now, at least for Apple Pay, the US, like a bunch of banks are on board, like hundreds or even thousands of banks are on board. But in Canada, American Express is the only thing that you can use Apple Pay with. And Google Wallet is doing fine now that kind of, because before in the States there was no real impetus for vendors to actually go and get NFC terminals. And now with Apple Pay, Apple is working with them and being like, listen, this is what's happening. You should do this. And at the same time, the government is also turning around and now at some point, I forget when it is, but it's within the next year, maybe 2, they're mandating having to use chip and pin in U.S. credit card transactions, possibly also debit. But that legislation has gone through and is just a matter of sort of when the deadline is for needing to support it. But in Canada, it's a lot less important because we've had tap to pay for at least a year or two pretty much everywhere. And so in terms of convenience and security, I agree it's not super different. It's not as important in Canada. But in terms of having only one thing and being able to not only pay, but also have rewards cards and have vendor gift cards or vendor points cards also going through NFC with one tap, that would be the system where you wouldn't have to carry around like 20 or 30 cards for each of the stores you go to. You would just have one thing and you'd put your thumb on it and it would know, A, you're shopping at the grocery store you always shop at, and so it would run your points card through, and it would also pay for the transaction. And that transaction would not only be very secure, but if the vendor you're dealing with, quote unquote, stole your credit card information from that transaction, they wouldn't be getting your credit card number, so you wouldn't have to be issued a new credit card. They would be getting a one-time transaction ID, and which is useless because it only works for that one transaction that's authorized at the time.
Right.
And even if you do need to be issued a new credit card, your bank can automatically go into your phone and swap out the numbers. So if you get issued a new credit card number, it all happens in the background automatically, and you're just issued a new number virtually, and there's no need. Like, you'd eventually be mailed a new number or a new credit card, physical credit card, but you wouldn't actually. You'd be able to just go on with your life if someone committed fraud against you. It's not like you'd be without a credit card. You would just have to like basically refresh the app, and it would get your new number. So there are a lot of reasons, like security being probably the biggest one, because credit card companies don't want to be on the hook for these transactions. Like, they don't want to be on the hook for fraud, and this is one way to substantially reduce fraud right now. And even when, like, there's always the thing of people are like, fraudsters are going to go for whichever is the least secure technology. And so right now, this being the least secure technology, this being the most secure technology, it's untouchable. But once this becomes the standard, yes, it's not necessarily, we haven't really seen much of it, but it's not impossible to exploit the system. But the exploits that we have seen, and there are articles about this when Apple Pay first launched, it was like, oh, I got Apple Pay credit card fraud committed against me, but it turns out it was just something insecure the credit card companies or the banks were doing, and it had nothing to do with the insecurity of Apple Pay. Right. So it was like once banks smooth that out, everything is fine, and it's vastly more secure to use any kind of NFC. But with the phone-based NFC, it's all virtual, and you don't actually need a physical card to change if something does happen to the card. This doesn't even begin to get into the fact that with the Apple Watch, you literally just have to, because it's already authenticated by being connected to a heartbeat.
Right.
You literally just tap a button twice, and you put your wrist on the thing, and you've paid for something. Like, you don't have to take anything out. You can be holding stuff in both hands, or in one hand at least, and you can still do it. There are a lot of reasons, and future is a good reason.
Aside from this being like the first worldliest of first world problems.
Everyone has to pay for stuff. It's not really first world.
Well,
it's just that it hasn't gotten adopted.
I need to spend an extra 5 seconds to pull out my card. But aside from that,
I'm sitting here at the end of the grocery checkout with all my fresh, affordable food behind me. It's guaranteed to be safe, basically. I have to pull something out of my pocket.
That I've been standing in line for 5 minutes already, that I could have pulled that out already. But
nope. I don't think anybody is making that argument, though. Nobody's like, come on, this is so much faster than taking out an NFC-based credit card.
No, I don't disagree with the security aspects that you're talking about. And I remember I'd read somewhere that the Tap NFC for cards uses a similar transaction ID system, but I think the vendor might still get your credit card info, but when it's the transactions made from the vendor to the credit card, I think there's a transaction ID. Somewhere along there's some sort of... They
can still look at your credit card and get all the information they need to make a payment.
Right. Something on their end still sees your credit card info. But yeah, I think what you're saying with the Apple Pay, the info stays with Apple.
Yeah, they never actually see the card.
Right. Or not with Apple. Well, probably with Apple somewhere, but in secure encrypted servers or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, and I'm assuming you brought it up because I had a story on it, but with the Cardberry, the Cardberry app and system, they basically use a card reader to import card info. So be it membership cards, gift cards, credit cards, debit cards, that kind of thing. And it's stored in an app similar to Passbook or Wallet, as it's now known as. And you just go into the app, select which card you want to use, and you have the one single, what's called a Cardberry card that makes the transaction or the swipe. Regardless of what type of card you're trying to use, you just select it within the app. So it's similar to the Tim Hortons ones that they have now, where you can flip between the gift card and the credit card, which I thought was cool when they first came out with it. But this sounds like a similar type system where it's one card that makes multiple types of readings from the stripe. The one issue is if it's limited to being a swipe, you might have some places. I don't know if they'll ever not accept the swipe, because I think you can always disable the tap, and some people just don't have chip cards, so they'll have to always have the swipe. But I don't know if there's some places that you won't be able to swipe a card. You'd have to use a chip or a tap. Maybe that'd be more in the future, but I guess as long as swipes around, then this is a kind of a cool thing. But I don't think this Cardberry system is actually available yet. I think it's still at the crowdfunding stage, possibly. Right. Or VC stage, I guess. But yeah, I think that's kind of a cool application of the app-based authentication.
I've also seen some, from working with retail, I've seen some of the new apps that basically manage all your loyalty cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are also fantastic. Just spectacular.
I tried coming up with a system for it that I photocopied or scanned, I guess, all my loyalty cards into a Google Keep document as images. So now I can just go into that and just grab. Most of the time, I just have to read out the membership, or they read off the membership number and punch it in by hand, because the barcodes, they're not crisp enough to scan with their scanners, and a lot of scanners can't read like a phone display. Like I know Cineplex they can read because of the scene thing, and then Starbucks their scanners can read the phone, but a lot of most scanners won't be able to read the phone display.
Like Second Cup readers can definitely read my phone screen, but what is it that can't? It's the Bay. The Bay can't read phone screens, which is hilarious.
Yeah. But every system you're able to hand enter in a membership number. Like whether the person on the other end knows you can, it's like just type it in. Barcodes are just numbers. So
does Android, when you open the wallet app and you have connected stuff, does the app crank the brightness way up? Because I found increasing contrast. Like the iPhone does that every time you open.
In Canada, the Android wallet doesn't have support here.
No, but I mean these loyalty apps, I guess. If I open Wallet, it just cranks the screen brightness way to the maximum.
I usually have to do that by hand. I have to go in and increase it.
Upping the contrast definitely helps.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll usually try to increase it, but it's just in general card readers, because I have it for my library card. So, and I've tried using it on the scanner at the library and it doesn't work, because it's just the simple red line. I think you need the kind of swirly type.
Every direction, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Before, I don't know how much more you guys have to say, but there is specifically. I feel like we've probably talked about Square, and if we haven't, you probably know something about it. But they're a company that has a swipe thing that you plug into your phone, and you can accept payments via swipe. Yeah. They now, in the States at least, have launched an NFC one that also accepts chips.
Oh, nice. So chips or the NFC tap?
Both.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's a little square thing that has a tapping surface, but it also has a little slot that you can slide the card in, and it works wirelessly. So it connects to a phone, but it doesn't actually need to be physically connected to it.
Does it have a dongle, or that you plug
No,
in?
it like connects via Bluetooth. I think
Oh,
it is.
nice.
Yeah, or it like interfaces via Bluetooth. Maybe connects via ad hoc Wi-Fi or something. But
Right.
yeah, very cool. And that's like Square is really cool. I've thought about getting it just because anytime I ever need to accept money from people, this the when when they first launched the Square reader, just the one that plugged into your headphone jack, it was I think it was cost $10, but it gave you a $10 credit when you got it, so it's effectively free. This one's $49 right now, and it's just launched. So really, the only for a business, the only cost is that it's 2.75% that they take to give to credit card companies and that they use to stay in business. But it's very affordable to have a business and accept any kind of payment now.
Right. Well, and if the alternative is like EMTs, you're having to charge, like the person on the other end is paying $1.50 to make that transfer. So
Yeah.
you may as well use the 2.75% transaction fee and pass that on to the consumer if you want, or just eat that as a convenience cost.
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, if you guys have nothing more to say on NFC, is there anything else you guys want to say before we go?
Yes. I started reading On Liberty by John Stuart Mill.
Okay.
And I'm currently on his chapter on liberty of thought and, what is it? Liberty of thought and discussion or something like that. And I'm currently just getting into the part where he's talking about like suppression of opinions and why that's fundamentally wrong. And I feel like that it's interesting because like the reasons he's bringing up are that, you know, these ideas are clearly wrong and they're damaging to things, but then he goes on to explain why just shutting down that kind of opinion is wrong. And I think a lot about climate change when that happens.
Okay.
And like how like I know that the prevailing scientific opinion is what it is and it's probably right. And then there's like all the deniers who, or skeptics as they'll call themselves.
Yeah.
But I also think there's an implicit assumption in the essay that people are reasonable. And like he says, you know, if you can't refute an idea with, you know, truth or your information, then the idea deserves to live. And I'm like, but what if people just don't want to let go?
Right.
What's the ethical answer to that? And so I just thought it was interesting, and I thought it was related to what we talk about here.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw a tweet by Richard Dawkins the other day. It was a retweet. I don't actually follow him. I
I'm
just
so torn on Richard Dawkins. You
Yeah,
have
I
no
know, me
idea.
too.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah. But his thing was, if you have a belief, like to paraphrase, it was have a belief system, but if you can't defend your beliefs, abandon them. Like, or no, he said defend your beliefs, but if they don't hold up to the scrutiny or the argument, abandon them. But then my thought was, well, but if your belief system isn't based on evidence, then that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're just going to continue believing it. So that's
it's like
food for thought.
You know, like having a utilitarian view towards society. Like, I want the most people to be happy. It's like, well, can you defend that? It's like, no, I just want people to be handy or be happy. Well, then abandon it. Happiness means nothing.
It's not really the same thing, but
I don't know.
It's more like as far as religious beliefs or, you know, evolution or climate change, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
if you have your beliefs. Say I don't believe climate change is anthropologically, you know, influenced, but it's like, well, based on what's that based on? How about this? How about this? How about this? And if you still don't have an answer for those, then you should say, okay, well, maybe you have a point, and abandon that.
My stance on this, I've repeated. I have a few things, like either video clips or things that I always come back to, and in this case, I always come back to CGP Grey in his, I think it was his 1 million subscriber Q&A, where he says, have beliefs by all means, but don't define yourself by your beliefs. Be willing to change your mind. And I think that in cases like this where people say, oh, I don't believe in climate change, they define themselves based on that
Right.
belief, and it's like, don't do that. You're setting yourself up for failure if you do that with anything.
Yeah.
Have a belief, but don't define yourself by it.
Well, and I think that's the issue with religious beliefs, because religious beliefs often, if not always, call you to define yourself by them. Even atheism is essentially a religious belief, and like vehement atheists will just, they're like, I'm an atheist. Like, okay.
Yeah, you're never gonna change my mind.
Yeah. But whatever.
Being
To each their
resolute
own.
like that.
Yeah.
It seems silly on either side.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is agnosticism for the win, or
Yes.
Undecidedness, yes. And that seems like as good a place as any to end it. It has been now, at least Mike and I have been recording for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
cool. I'm glad I got in on that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Glad you woke up and roll out of bed for us.
I don't know what's like. I've just been doing a lot. I've been doing more strength training.
Oh yeah? Oh, nice.
Maybe it's also that it's dark out so much. Just can't seem to get enough sleep lately.
Oh. Cool. I'm gonna stop the broadcast. Bye, guys.
So yeah.